Hey everybody, welcome to the Retire 25 podcast. I'm your host, Salomon Roybal, and with us today we have the two beautiful, successful entrepreneurs, Melirosa Roybal and Tori Dardy. Melirosa is an MLM network marketing entrepreneur and now is the head investor in the financial markets of our family portfolio. And Tori is also an MLM entrepreneur. Used to have a little a tax empire, and now is an online marketing entrepreneur. Melly, how are you today?
I'm doing amazing, absolutely amazing. Super, super excited to be with you on another podcast.
It's great, great. And how are you today, Tori?
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey, everybody. Hopefully, everybody's out there staying super positive, super high energy. It's super important today to stay, very positive. I feel great. And yeah, so if people want to follow me on Instagram, they can. This is something that I'm just kind of at the beginning of becoming an online marketer. So I'm learning, and it's super exciting, but also very, very scary at the same time. Everybody know who's in entrepreneurship, like whenever you start a new venture, it's always all those butterflies and all those, things that come up that you're not expecting. So people can follow me on Instagram at Tori Dardy, and just kind of like follow the journey. I know I'm going to be successful because I'm going to persist with it. And it's going to be really, really an amazing, exciting journey. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much, Sal.
That's right. And well, you just made the perfect segue into today's topic. We're going to talk about persistence. The importance of being persistent as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. And, Tori, since you already talked on the topic, can you share with us a little bit more how being persistent has led, or has led to your success when you first started off, and how it's carried you through?
I think this is like a super important topic. It's like something that maybe a little bit overlooked in the entrepreneurship world and in the world in general. A lot of times people don't realize like you are persisting every day within your life. You're persisting. It's just whether or not you're persisting in the good things that are getting you the results that you want, or you're persisting in things that are not getting you the things that you want. So that's something that you really have to take a look at. And that's something for me, whenever you transition from working traditional jobs and having something where it's very structured, it's very, very nerve-wracking. And that's something that you really have to examine. You really have to take time and stop. And for me, it helps me to write things down. So I really had to stop. I had to do a lot of self-examination, and I had to journal about it in my goal book, as far as like what habits have I persisted with that have gotten me where I am now, and what do I want to go do going forward to reach the goals that I really am trying to achieve at the present moment.
Yeah.
And the things that you have been persisting in like procrastination, avoidance, things like that, that you have to be honest with yourself that you've been persistent in, and it's not serving your purpose. You have to really work to cut those things out. And the things that you have been persisting in, as far as like, I know for me, I've had a lot of things that have been kind of like setbacks. Even when I was like in college, going through like Katrina and different things like that, and always coming to a crossroads where you have the option of staying and finishing your degree where you're at, or going to another place where it may be more comfortable. And I chose to finish my degree where I was at, because I wanted to persist where I started. I wanted to finish my journey where I started at. And I think as entrepreneurs, that's something that we really have to like look back on the past, in parts of your life where you persisted in something and you were happy with the result of it. For me, that was something that I was very, very, it really built up my self-esteem. It really built up my belief system in myself, and you know how important mindset is to
That's
me,
right.
and how I know that like mindset is your strong foundation. So it really builds your mindset when you have things that you can look back on and put those as tools into your toolbox. It's like you have your utility belt. You want to put as many things in that utility belt. That way, when situations come up, you already have your tool. You whip it out. You know exactly what you need. So for me, it's always things that you're persisting in. You have to really, really be honest with yourself. It helps to write them down. Things that you're persisting in that are helping you reach your goals, and things that are you're persisting in that are hindering you from your goals, and really like work to cut out the things that are not helping you, and really magnify and continue to persist with the things that are helping you reach the goals that you're trying to reach. So I think that's super important.
And that daily audit of what is helping me and what is not is so crucial, so crucial. And I think a lot of us fail in that because it's hard for us to reflect and, and tell ourselves that we're failing in something or we're not doing something correct. Because I think that's human nature, right?
Right.
Human nature to assume that we're always in the correct. Melly, when someone wants to be more persistent, Tori gave us a lot of great tips on, write stuff down. What other tools would you give someone who's, probably right now, especially during these times, maybe starting to feel like this isn't for them, maybe they're starting to struggle?
I think two of the main things that you can do to really develop more of a persistent habit in your life is, number one, start being persistent in small things. Sometimes we don't realize, but habits are formed and we start doing them in small everyday tasks, and then they end up being the habits that we use when we're talking more long-term and we're thinking of our career or how we are as like long-term people and our character. So I think if you decide that you need to be a more persistent person, be more persistent in every single thing that you do. Say that you are the other day, my trash can got messed up. The lid wouldn't close. My daughter just kind of slammed it shut, and it messed up something in there. It's one of those trash cans where you press the foot pedal and the top comes up, and somehow it got messed up. And I was there trying to fix it, and in that time, I could have said, this is just messed up. Like, I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to buy another one, or I'm going to just leave it as it is, and it's going to be a little wonky forever. Or you can decide to just be persistent and to kind of remind yourself, like, oh, this is something my mom always says, who's going to win? Is the trash can going to win, or am I going to win? Someone's going to win in this situation. And if you start being persistent in the little things, if you're someone that works out and you run a mile every day, but you start getting tired, do you stop when you're tired, or do you persist to that whole mile? And then once you get the mile, do you say, you know what, I'm going to do another lap just for good measure? That is the type of habit that we think is, in the small things of our life, and maybe don't necessarily apply to our business aspect, but they are the habits that start developing a mental pattern that does then manifest in our business, in our everyday things that, are very crucial to our life and to our success. So that would be number one, just start persisting in everything that you do. And number two would be to really think back to times when you were persistent and be really honest with yourself. What did it feel like? Because a lot of times we think, oh, it's hard. I should just give up. This is a sign that it's not for me. This is a sign that it's not going to work out, and we give up. But if you think back to a time in our life when we were persisting through that feeling, we remember that that feeling is just part of the process. I remember so many times in MLM just breaking down and crying and being like, everything I'm trying isn't working. Nothing's working. Nothing's, giving me results. What am I doing? Should I just give up? Should I go back to my career, to my traditional career? And it was during those times that, sorry, give me a second.
She's starting to get that jazzy voice.
Low throaty.
She's getting a little soulful in this.
Yeah, she almost brought out the jazz to it.
It's during those times when you want to give up that success really is on the other side of that. If you just keep going, and if you're honest with yourself and you remember those moments, you know what, I really did feel like it was the end right before I had a breakthrough. And now once you reach that point again, instead of thinking, okay, you know what, I'm feeling like this is the end for me, instead of giving up, if you're really honest with yourself about the last time you had success, you went through that same feeling of feeling like it was the end.
Yeah.
So that for me is just really important. And a lot of times, like you said, Sal, it's hard to be honest with ourselves. It's hard to look in the mirror. It's hard to really, really be honest about our own emotions. But if we remember things honestly, we will see that it's just part of the process. And the next time that you feel like you're about to give up, you know, just keep going, keep being persistent. Someone's got to win out of that situation. And it's either going to be you or it's going to be whatever the obstacle is.
Yeah. Just like Matt said in the last podcast, right? You know, he finished it with such a great quote. You know, it's the worst when you're going through it,
right?
But you have to keep going through that to get through it. You touched a little bit, Melly, about, you know, your MLM when you were struggling. Do you ever like reflect on that time when you're having difficult times? I know right now as an investor, the market's all over the place, and you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been in the market are trying to invest, and the market's just been slapping them around a little bit.
Definitely.
Are there times when you still reflect back and, you know, use that old motivation to like keep pushing you forward now?
Definitely, because when success is all the same, in my opinion. It's you going through something difficult, because if you're learning something new, it's going to be difficult. There's no point where it's just going to be easy, where you're going to success is not this like linear skyrocket to success where overnight you make $1 million. And even though some people have made $1 million overnight, what you don't see is all the years that they put into developing the skills that paid off in what looks like an overnight success.
Like that quote says, right? My overnight success took 40 years.
Exactly.
Yep.
So even though from the outside it may look like that, from the inside, only you know what you've been through to put yourself in that position. So I definitely look back to my MLM days, and I think, you know, I remember what it felt like to be persisting against all odds, to be working, you know, late nights, to be just giving it my all, and to be putting in such focus. And I remember, I think one of the most important things is I remember feeling like I was treading water a lot. And I remember feeling like I remember looking for like this big breakthrough. And every time I felt like I was about to have a breakthrough, it being like lackluster. Instead of having this like huge blow up in my business, maybe it was like a little spark. And at the time, it felt like a letdown, right? I was expecting maybe 1,000 people to show up, and 200 people showed up, or 30 people showed up. And it felt like this huge letdown to me. But what was most important, I think the biggest lesson in that, was that after 2 years of persisting, I was so much further than I could have even imagined in the beginning. After 2 years of persisting, I was able to fulfill all of my goals. You know, when I started MLM, our family was kind of divided. My mom and I were out here in Florida. We had decided to move out here to start our business, and my dad and my brother were actually still in California. And you were still in Arizona, right? You were still finishing college. My dad was in California. I had this desire to like reunite my parents. And I remember when my mom and I decided to stay in Florida, we really liked it here. We were like, you know what, let's try to move everyone out here because we love it here. Our big goal was to buy a house. Our big goal was to buy my parents' dream house in Florida. And through those 2 years, although it felt like nothing was giving me that big giant breakthrough that I was looking for, and it felt like everything was just like these lackluster little like sparks, and I was looking for an explosion, I was looking for a boom, and I was getting these little sparks. At the end of those 2 years, I still bought the house. So at the end of the 2 years, I still fulfilled the goal, even though when I was doing it, it didn't feel like enough. So I think that's like a big lesson, and I always try to hold on to that, is that even though when you're making those steps, it feels like you're taking one step forward, two back, another one forward, another one back, and it feels like you're kind of treading water. If you just keep persisting, at the end of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to be so much further than you could have ever imagined.
And
100%.
You know, And you touched on something very important. As you said, you were expecting a certain result, but you didn't have that result, so it feels like a letdown. But if you look at, you filled a room with 250 people. That's
Right.
250 people listening to your opportunity. That's 30 people listening to your opportunity, whatever the people is, right? And how
Right.
you said, in the moment, you wanted 1,000, you wanted 10,000, you wanted, right?
Mhm.
But persistently having 30 people each week, you got to that point where you bought the family house. You got our parents back in Florida, and now, although I think we had to pull our dad by his feet to the airport. He likes Florida now. He likes Florida.
Yeah, he grew on him for sure.
Exactly. I remember he came with one backpack and minimal clothes. He came and
Yeah,
was like, I need to go buy some clothes because I didn't pack anything.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and even though now we have the house in Florida, our mom decided to leave to Colombia and wants to live there and buy a house there. So
We gotta
but I
pack
think
him
that's
back. Now we gotta pack up his backpack again.
exactly. But I think that's also a big lesson in success is that your goals today, once you reach them, you're going to outgrow them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as long as you are okay with that, you're never going to be like let down by it because it's just part of growth.
Right.
Right now, the biggest, right now, whatever your goal in business is, say, for example, for the people listening to us, say your goal is to make, $10,000 a month. If that's, your goal in your business, I want to scale my business to $10,000 a month. Everyone I know, myself included, who has gotten to that point, realizes that that's just not a lot of money.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not.
Then once you get there, you're like, oh, okay, I need to like triple this. I need at
Mhm.
least like 5 times, 10 times this income because
Yeah.
it's just not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
But that's part of life. But the more you grow, the more, your business has to grow, the more your surroundings have to grow because you will outgrow your goals every time you reach them.
And it's way easier to get to the second level of a house going step by step by step. Each step is a little step up rather than trying to jump up to the second level on your own. That would be very difficult.
Exactly.
So those little
Definitely.
steps are important. Like you thinking, okay, 10,000, it sounds very hard. I know for me, that's like something I really, really had to learn that it's okay. Like it's not a bad thing for you to reach your goal and then see that there's a bigger goal for you to set after that little goal.
Yeah.
So, and the goal that you reach doesn't seem little when you set it. Like right now,
Exactly.
for me, scaling my online business, it doesn't seem small for me to say I want to make, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 a year. I mean, a month. But I know once I reach it, it's gonna be like, okay, that was small. Now I gotta go.
Yeah.
But like when I first started doing it that way, it was like something I had to really, really adjust to and get used to because um, just like growing up with the traditional mindset and going to school and stuff like that, you feel like, okay, once I get this degree, this is going to be it. Or once I get this is it. You kind of get the mindset that like, once you achieve something, that's enough. But it's okay for that not to be enough.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to achieve that. And then, okay, now I'm ready for my next goal. So I got this degree, so now I'm ready to start a business, or I'm ready to start investing, or whatever it may be. So I think that's really, really important that Melirosa hit on that because it's something really, really important.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes a difficult adjustment in your mindset, but once you adjust it, it's so detrimental. Like it's something that's going to really skyrocket you because you'll be comfortable with setting bigger and better goals and being persistent through those goals and knowing once you reach the goal that you set, there's going to be another goal. You set that, you reach that, you keep knocking them down. Those are the stair steps that are taking you ultimately up to success and excellence.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tori,
Definitely.
right now, that was a perfect analogy, right? The steps. Because, I feel like $10,000 a month is like a cliche in a way because that's kind of like everybody's starting goal, right?
Right.
And cliches are okay a lot of times, like because we all have that same idea. So yeah, you have that 10,000, you hit 10,000, now you want 15, 20, 30, right? So you keep scaling it up. Tori, since you're starting right now, right? Like you're just starting off on online marketing. How long have you been doing it right now?
Probably just for maybe like 90 days, so like the
Okay.
last 3 months, and just really get my feet wet, like
Yeah.
learning Facebook ads. It's like a
Mhm.
whole monster, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an onion. You peel back one layer and you're like, oh, it's several more layers, and you just
Yeah.
keep peeling more and more layers. So it's a very intricate, but it's very exciting as well.
So you
So
started right before the pandemic. Right
exactly.
before the pandemic. Perfect time.
Exactly.
Perfect time. So you kind of got straight thrown into, rough waters, right? You got
hmm
thrown into the hurricane.
hmm
What have you been doing to like keep yourself up, keep yourself motivated each morning, or when you feel like, okay, this is just something that it's overwhelming, whatever it may be, right? Like what are you doing to keep yourself going?
Okay, so number one, like I said last week on our first uh, podcast that we did, this is so important. If you're listening to this podcast, you are on the right track. You are 100% have your mindset already dialed into the right key, and you just have to keep going where you're going now,
Yeah.
which is that listening to things that's going to feed your spirit, that's going to feed your energy with positivity, and people who are either going through what you are going through at the same time as you, so they know exactly how you feel and exactly what obstacles and what drawbacks come to your mind, or they've been there and they've had success, and you want to listen to, because like they said, success leaves clues.
Yeah.
So 100% listening to these type of podcasts, listening to motivation. For me in the morning, I like to get up, and oftentimes like I'll work out and I'll listen to Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas is one of my favorites. So like just listening to, finding things that resonate really with you, and make sure you're feeding those things to yourself daily. Because I know when I first started out like years ago, and I was like, okay, I listened to this Les Brown, and or I read the book, and I'm good, I got that, but that's like so backwards now that I see. Like you have to continually like feed and renew your mind with the motivation, the positivity, and those things. So podcasts like this are so important. You learn things, you get pointers, you don't feel alone. You know that there's people going through what you're going through. You feel much more encouraged after you listen to them. So definitely feeding yourself with positivity and the right type of like people say, like you are what you eat.
Right.
What you eat is not just what you consume in food. It's everything that you consume around your environment, the people that you're around, what you listen to, what you choose to like have, soak into your subconscious mind. So I think that's very important. Another thing is books. So learning and continuously learning, realizing that no matter how much you know, and no matter what stage you're at as an entrepreneur, there's always more that you can know. If you're making, for example, you said like a lot of people who start out in entrepreneurship, their goal usually is 10,000 a month. That's kind of like a staple for us. So once you have that 10,000, okay, so that there's some people that's making 100,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
So like even if you reach that goal, there's always more to learn. So what is that person, the entrepreneur that's doing, like somebody like Grant Cardone, who's probably making, maybe 250 a month, who knows? But there's always more steps that you can take. So that means there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
And the way that you learn is by doing like books. If you don't like to read, for me, I like to listen to audiobooks. Those things, Audible is like one of my best friends since this came out. And then like courses, and then just networking, you know what I mean? Like me, you, Melirosa, this is so important for us to be able to like ping ideals off of each other, to encourage each other when we're doing different ventures, for us to be able to combine our somewhat like our following. Like we're doing the podcast, you're posting it out to your people, I'm posting it out to my people. Networking is so important. So I think those are some really important things. Make sure you're always working on your mindset, and that should be something daily, that you're listening to a podcast like this daily, that you're really like dialing in daily with things that resonate with you. Learning, something that you should realize as entrepreneurs, there's always more to learn. There's never a time that you know everything. And that's what they say about Warren Buffett. One of the reasons why he's so successful is because he literally is always studying. He's always reading, he's always studying, he's always researching. So that when it's time for him to take action or pull that trigger, he knows exactly where to aim it, because he's already done all the research. He's already been studying it for years. So always know you should be learning as an entrepreneur and then networking. So those are my three main, I think, are very important. And even touching a little bit on what Melirosa said and what Matt said last time when you were talking to Matt, which was an awesome interview, by the way. I really enjoyed that. It kind of goes back to one of my favorites, is Les Brown. And he says, are you going through this thing or are you growing through this thing? And that's why I think persistence is so important, because you can go through something and like, okay, I survived it, and that's good that you survived it, or you can grow through it. And when you grow through it, you learn from it. You didn't just survive it, you learned from it and you used it as something that could take you up higher to another level.
Yeah. And right now, what are you reading?
For right now, I'm kind of going back to old, trusty, refreshing myself on how to influence people and win friends. And then I'm also reading Russell Brunson's Traffic Secrets, because those are two things that are really like important to what I'm trying to do. So I'm concentrating on online marketing, which really is I don't want to say the wave of the future, because it's here now, you know what I
mean? we in the wave.
We in the wave right now. We riding the wave. We surfing the wave. But it's something that's really going to become more and more important as time passes and as things become more, like you said, digitalized. So Traffic Secrets is super important. And I really love Russell Brunson and how he breaks things down and makes it super easy for you to understand, with a very simple way of writing and a way of breaking down the chapters and making the information like bite-sized so you can kind of like process. I digested that. Now I'm on to the next little meal. And then influencing people and relating to people, that's something that's timeless. That's why some of those are classics. Some classics are really classics because they're timeless. And it's always important to be able to relate to people in a positive manner, because you know we see our president, he relating to people, but that, you know, so you really want to relate to people in a very positive manner. You want to be able to hold what somebody is saying and what is important to them as important to you, so you can always communicate with them and get your ideals across. As a marketer, you're trying to get your ideals out into the world, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're not communicating positively, and what other people are saying is not important, because marketing is all about listening to what people want, what the market wants, and adjusting what you're trying to do to that you know, to what that feedback. So those are two that I'm reading right now that are really like
that's a great mix of books, because you got your personal growth and you got your business growth. And, you know, those really do go hand in hand, because if your mind's not right, your pocket's not going to be right. So Melly, what are you reading right now?
I am back to the classic. One of my all-time favorite books is actually The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And for me, it is just super, super important to realize what we repeat to ourselves. And when we're talking about, you know, persistence, sometimes we develop mantras that we persistently and consistently tell to ourselves that are actually like detrimental to ourselves. And it could be as simple as, you know, I'm not good at cutting fruit, or I'm not good at doing this, I can't do that. And years have gone by, and we, you know, decided when we were a teenager or a child that we can't do something, and now, you know, we're grown and we still have those limitations that we actually put on ourselves. So I think it's actually super, super important for anyone who hasn't heard that book, who hasn't read that book. You know, you can find it on Audible, you can find it on YouTube for free. It's an old classic, The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. It is incredible. It just teaches you to be more mindful about how you speak to yourself, and be more mindful about what you repeat to yourself every day.
No, that's a great book. That's one of my top 5 right there. Yeah,
Definitely.
right now, you know, as we're going through it, you know, you said being persistent. I've actually read the same book 4 times back to back, because I haven't found the message in it, right? I
Right.
keep taking new things out of it each time I listen to it. And I've listened to the same book 4 times in 1 week, and it's the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And I'm just, I keep picking out new things each day. And when I do that in a book, it's usually, I usually have 6 months, a year in between to where I
Right.
go back to it and I'm listening to new things. But with this one, I've been really, every time finding new things, and it's kind of been, it's an interesting thing to experience because we don't normally see it that quickly. We don't change that quickly, or we don't see the changes in ourselves. But what I've been doing is I've been reading it and applying it, right?
Right.
And a lot of times we read but we don't apply. We
Mhm.
read all kinds of books, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then we go back to our normal selves.
Right.
We go back to doing
Right.
our own stuff. But it's hard to be persistent. I feel like that's such a good topic for times like right now, because everyone has to grow, right? Like Tori said, are you growing through it, or are you going through it?
Right.
We have to grow through this. We have to come out the other end different. We have to come out smarter, more educated, more agile, be able to change with the markets, because we don't know what's going to be at the end of this. We're still in
Exactly.
quarantine times. We're still in quarantine. We're still in pandemic. So it's a very interesting process that we're going through. Well, as we persist through our challenges, as we go through these things, Tori, what would you tell somebody that's this close? They're about to throw in the towel. Maybe they started a little side hustle during the pandemic from their house. They started a business in January, and it's just kind of gone downhill since then. What would you tell someone to be able to lift them up and help them persist through this challenge?
I would say, excuse me, I would say, just remember where you are today. All the millionaires pretty much have been exactly where you are. If you read anybody's books, it's always good to read those books, because then you see what everybody else have been through. Grant Cardone, Les Brown, he was living out of his office, you know what I mean, before he made it. Grant Cardone was literally just driving around the country in his car. Yeah, he started, you know what I'm saying? So just know that everybody who has success in general, even for me recently, I heard the story of The Rock. I don't know if you like the guy who he was a wrestler. Now he's like in Fast and the Furious, I think he was in. Or
He's an
something like
actor
that.
now. He's
an actor,
in a lot of movies. Yeah.
He's the highest paid actor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's the highest paid
Mhm.
actor now.
And a lot of people kind of had some things. I heard some negative things about him. But I actually heard some of his story, and his story is crazy. I had no idea when he got cut from his football team. He was semi-pro. It wasn't even pro, so he wasn't even making that much money. He was playing in Canada, and he left with $7 in his pocket. And he had to call his wife, and she was like, "Send me that $7. So I need that $7." So and for him to be where he is now, but when you see where he came from, so just remember that it's always darkest before the storm, and that is a cliche for a reason, because it's so true. It's so true. So and a lot of people are going through exactly what you're going through. You're not by yourself, and the main thing is, if you persist, then you will win. If you don't give up, you only lose when you give up. If you give up, then you're not going to ever get to that success. You're not ever going to get out of the funk or the trying situation that you're in. But if you persist, if you don't give up, then you will you'll definitely get out of it. And there's not any golden ticket. It's not Charlie in a Chocolate Factory. You're not going to find a golden ticket that's going to skyrocket you out of your situation. Persistence really is key. And when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself, because I'm really at a place where in my marketing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I never would if in a million years imagine I would be where I am right now. And I'm really have a goal of what I'm trying to make every month for my family and for our goals. And it's very, very important. And it's it's coming way slower than I thought it would. You know what I mean? I thought I would be a lot further. This is June. I thought I would be a lot further by the middle of the year when I started writing out my goals. I kind of spoke on that last time when we did our 2020 vision goals. Everybody was super excited. It was turn of, a new start of a whatever you call it, decade, you know what I mean? So it's like, it was really, really exciting. And now it's like, okay, now we're in June and all this crazy stuff has happened. So you really, really have to like really evaluate yourself, I think is really important, and just know that you're not alone. A lot of people have gone through it. There's not one successful person that you can really think of. A lot of people kind of think of like, oh, rich people, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. But most entrepreneurs, that's not the case. Even if they started out with a fortunate family who maybe helped them, they still had to persist, because you don't make it in entrepreneurship. You don't make it working for yourself if you do not persist. And that's just point blank and period. It's a necessary skill set that you have to have, because working for yourself and having your own business, being your own boss, you're not going to make it through without having a lot of trials and tribulations and a lot of obstacles, and being able to persist and go through those and get out to the other side. So just know you're doing the right thing. You're listening to this podcast. We're going to keep you uplifted. We're going to always bring the positivity, power punch to you. And you're not going through it alone. I'm going through the exact same thing right now. But in order for you to get to the other side of that, you have to persist.
And Melly, what would you tell someone, to keep them motivated, keep them happy, keep them focused on that light at the end?
I love this question. I absolutely love this question. I think this is one of the most important things that you can really adopt as like one of your mantras, right? Like Les Brown, his mantra is, "It's not over until I win." And I love the concept behind that, because in reality, the only difference between winning and losing is where you stop. So we're all going to, in our journey to winning, we're all going to have downs, we're all going to have ups. It's just whether you decided to stop when you were down or whether you decided to stop when you were up. And if you stop when you were down, then you lost. It was a loss. Say you started a business and you haven't been able to get it off the ground. You're in debt because you bought some course, or you're in debt because of whatever reason you invested into your business. And now, that business is technically negative, say negative $1,000. If you stop right now, then yes, that business was a loss for $1,000 and you never made that money back. You never got positive. But if you don't stop, if you continue forward and you keep seeing it through when you're positive $10,000, then that same situation is now a win for you. And I think that's super important when we're going through things, is just to remember, like, don't let it stop when you're down. Don't let yourself give up when you're down, because that's just going to be a big loss in your like repertoire. That's going to be like a memory, like, oh no, entrepreneurship, like I tried that when I was young, and all it was I bought some course and it was a big sham. It did nothing for me. All it did was like throw money down the toilet for me. And I think it's just super important that we remember when we're going through things that when this is something I like kind of talked about earlier, but when we're going through things, it seems like forever. It seems like, okay, like Tori's talking about this, okay, 6 months into the year and I don't feel like I'm where I want to be. And yes, when you're going through that, 6 months feels like forever. So if you are out there and you started a business recently and you're still kind of like still getting it off the ground, yes, I understand you. It feels like forever. But 3 years from now, if you look back and you think, oh my God, in 6 months, I took my business from 0 to 10,000 or from 0 to 1,000 a month. I was able to kind of replace my income. When you look back on it, 6 months is nothing. So that's always something that I keep in my mind. Like, okay, when you're going through it, even if it takes you 3 years, say it takes you 3 years to get your business from where it is right now to where you want it to be, those 3 years are going to suck. I'm going to let you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Those 3 years are going to suck. You're going to feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? But once you're 40, once you're 50, once you're 60, and you're looking back on your life and you're like, it took me 3 years to get my business off the ground. That's nothing. Because in reality, some people, it takes them 7 years, 10 years, 12 years to build a fortune, to build a legacy, to build a long-term business. And even when we talk to those people, it seems like nothing. When, you know, lots of very successful people will kind of give their story. And in reality, you find out, oh my God, it took them 12 years to build their empire. And no one looks and bats an eye. No one like double looks at, 12 years, that's forever. So that to me is very important. If you are going through this right now, if you are feeling like giving up, if you're feeling like, you know, it's been too long, if you've invested too much, if you feel like you just can't move forward, just remember, if you stop today, then you did lose. But if you don't stop, if you keep going, you have the opportunity to make this loss a win and just a part of your story. And remember, looking back on this, it's going to feel like nothing. And that's something that something I feel like we can all think of, right? When you're starting college, 4 years feels like forever. But when you look back on it, 4 years flew by.
Went by
4
like
years
that.
was nothing, you know? So 10 years, if you look back, depending on how old you are, when you look back on 10 years flies by like nothing. So in reality, it's not going to feel like it. In the future, it's not going to feel like it feels right now. Right now,
you're
it
going
feels like
through
forever. In the future, you're going to be like, oh, it only took me 7 months. That's nothing. That's incredibly fast. Those 7 months sucked. Those 7 months were the hardest 7 months of your life, of failing for 7 months.
And real quick, Salomon, one thing that I want to touch on that Melirosa brought up that's so important is that one thing that keeps me going when I'm thinking and when I'm like really like, oh man, it's like it's June, it's been 6 months, all these unexpected things have happened. I'm not where I thought I would be envisioned. I have to really like revamp my goals. Is thinking about the alternative. Like the alternative is like there's two sets of people who are going through the pandemic right now. There are entrepreneurs who are like having setbacks and trying to have their own business and being their own boss, and maybe have to really reevaluate and revamp and like move through the next quarter, like the next quarter, the next half of the year. And there's people who have been working for 20 years on a job and now are laid off. You know what I mean? So that's the alternative. Like the alternative is like, and I remind myself that on a regular basis. Like, I mean, I either have the option of persisting through this and making this business successful, or I have the option of going back and working for somebody else, which is something that I do not want to do, because it's not really true security. It's a form of security that people have built up in their mind, but it's really not secure. It's a false sense of security, because you can be laid off at any time. Any type of situation can happen where the business goes under. Anything can happen. It's just not reliable. And then you're not in control. At least with this, I'm in control of my own destiny. And that's something that's really important. So a lot of times when you're going through your lowest moments and you may be thinking about like, hey, is this really worth it for me to keep going on? And you need to go another hour, another day, another minute in it. Just remind yourself of the alternative. The alternative is putting your fate back into the hands of other people, putting the fate of your family, your goals of what you want to achieve with your family back into the hands of other people. And it's something that's very unreliable. There's people who have been working on a job for 10, 15 years. We're thinking 6 months, 12 months is a long time, but think about 12 years you've been working on a job and now you're laid off, and you're trying to figure out like, should I cash in my 401k if I'm lucky enough to even have that, or what am I going to do? You know what I'm saying? So the alternative is, trust me, like just remind yourself of the alternative, and that's a lot of times will give you the gas that you need to fuel yourself a little bit longer.
That's right.
Definitely.
Well, you know, it's been a great conversation. I know.
Awesome.
I hope a lot of people really took a lot from this. Now, you know, we got to get right for the week. We got to get our mindset right. We have to get focused. We have to get aligned. After that, we're going to have our mindset moment with Tori.
Okay. I already kind of hit on it a little bit, but one of the things that's important is to always give yourself the fuel that you need to jet through the week, the fuel that you need to keep going. And just remember that in the moment, it's just important to get through the minute, the hour, the day. So don't try to think too big. when you're being discouraged, or when you're trying to get through your week, don't try to think too big, because a lot of times that's discouraging. What you do is take it into a bite-sized piece that's easier for you to digest, which is like, I just need to get through. Don't worry about this 6 months. Worry about this week. Worry about this day, and just take it day by day. They say take it day by day because it really, really works. When you think about it, take it day by day, and each day, make sure you're doing something that is action that is putting you closer to your goals. And that's how you get through the week. And that's what you need to get through the week. And if you need to listen to this podcast again so you can get that positive power punch, go ahead and listen to it again, because we're always going to bring it for you. But just get through the week. Don't worry about the next 6 months. Don't discourage yourself with something that's too big or too large to grasp. Just get through the week by getting through each day. Today is the first day, and then get through Monday, Tuesday, and before you know it, you already have knocked down quite a bit. So just get through the week, and that's the most important thing. So keep your mindset positive. And when you feel like you're getting down, one of the things that I do when I feel like I'm getting down is list off 10 things that I'm grateful for in my life right now at this moment.
Perfect.
And that always helps. It always brings you up, and it actually switches your mind from like discouraging, complaining, or whatever you may be like coming into a negative thought pattern into a positive thought pattern. Because when you think of what you are grateful for, you're fortunate to be in a situation where you can always list off 10 things in your life that you're grateful for. And no matter what situation you're in, there's always 10 that you can find. Exactly. So that's one of the easiest, quickest exercises that I can give you to get through the week. So stay positive and keep persisting, and you will make it.
Amazing. And you know what? We're gonna put that into action, because we gotta have a great week. Everybody listen to this, especially ourselves. We're gonna have a great week. And
I feel better just listening to myself, listening to all of us talk. I feel very fired up, like I'm ready to go get it.
Exactly.
A lot more encouraged.
Right. All right. Now we're going to have our financial watch with Melirosa. What's going on, Melly?
All right. And before I start the financial watch, I just kind of want to say one last thing about this mindset and, this podcast, and what Tori was talking about earlier about, really feeding your mind, books, podcasts, audiobooks, motivational speakers, like all that stuff is so, so important, because it's, even if they're your virtual friends, they might be who you need, right? A lot of us, when we start our entrepreneurial journey, we don't realize that we're going to have to let go of a lot of people in our lives just because they don't understand what you're doing. I remember being 25, starting an MLM, and moving to another state, not knowing anyone, giving up my social life, choosing not to have a social life, just so I could stay completely focused on my business, and people not understanding it. People just saying, you're 25, you're young, you should be having fun, you should be with your friends, you should be doing all those things, but none of those things mattered to me. And it was so important to have virtual friends, books and authors and podcasts and things that were more aligned with who I was. And that's something that even my daughter is going through right now. She is doing a lot of independent learning this summer. She's learning instruments, she's learning sign language, she's doing math, she's doing grammar, she's reading a lot. And she made the mistake of telling her friends, her schedule, her daily schedule. I do,
they're like, that's crazy.
Math. I'm doing 7th grade math. I'm doing reading. I'm reading so many books. I'm doing essays. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And her friends were like, what are you talking about?
Your parents are mean.
Summer. Your parents are mean. Tell them to leave you alone. You should be having fun. You should be, chilling. This is your summer. And we had to have that conversation with her. Like, listen, they're not on what you're on. And that's okay. But what is necessary is that you surround yourself with people that are on the same wavelength, on the same mindset that you're on. And even if you can't find them in person, even if you have to find them online, there's a whole community of people that are going to feed that same positive mindset back to you. So I think the best thing you can do is surround yourself with positivity and with entrepreneurs. And with that, we are going to talk about the market. Give me 1 second to share my screen.
What's on fire today?
Where is my screen share button? No. Oops. Where's my screen share button?
If you go down to the
The green
bottom.
one.
Oh,
Mhm.
share screen, the big
There you
green
go.
one. Oh, goodness.
You know, sometimes they label things so
Sometimes
discreetly and cryptic, right? Screen share.
I mean, even they make it all big.
My
My dad used
technology.
to say, a
Okay, I see
very
you with that house.
old Southern saying is, if it was a bear, it would have bit you.
Yo.
Definitely. All right, so we're looking here at the S&P 500, as I explained last time, but I'll go into it a little bit more. These are the 500 biggest companies in the stock market. They're all kind of piled into one, and this is the average of what they're moving. So this is a great way to look at the market in general. And this right now, what we're seeing is great news for anybody who has a 401k, anyone who's in mutual funds, who, you know, a few months ago, back in February, back in March, saw their account just vanish before their eyes. And maybe it gave them, you know, flashbacks back to like 2009 when that happened, but it took years and years to recover. Thankfully, this time it just took a month or two to recover. And we're back. This yellow line up here is showing the highs from before the crash, this little mini crash we had that was drastic, but, you know, recovered quickly. And last week we were talking about this movement right here where we closed above this white line, which is the 200 moving average. We closed above it, and, you know, we kind of staggered up, and then we saw big volume moving up. And this week, this was Thursday, I believe. Thursday, we had this big, fat, juicy candle, red candle moving down. And something to keep in mind about this candle. One, it was not based on news. So there was not like a war declared or a big second wave of coronavirus, or, you know, there was no big news catalyst that has legs to continue moving. If we look back to when the market started moving down back in February, this was news based. So there was a news catalyst that was going to have lots and lots of repercussions. You know, hey, there's a global pandemic, the global economy, the global supply chain. People are going to have to be quarantined. What is that going to do for business? What is that going to do for the economy? So that kind of news carried the market down.
Yeah.
But what we saw on Thursday was not news based. It was actually a very, very common thing that happens in the market. You know, the market doesn't go straight up. It zigzags up. And so the fact that we crossed above the 200 moving average, it's very normal for the market to cross above a moving average and then come down and retest it. So this is actually a really, really strong sign. And I mean, this is the market. Your guess is as good as mine. You know, the market could really do whatever it wants. It has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
But looking at this technical pattern, what it's likely to do is it actually looks like it kind of caught itself. So if we look down here, it crossed above the 200 moving average, it came down, and yes, it's a big fat candle, but a lot of that is stop losses being hit. A lot of that is new traders who are only used to seeing green portfolios, only used to seeing making money, and all of a sudden they're seeing like their portfolio turn red, and they just panic. They're just like, abort ship, let me like jump off this ship. But if you see how it caught itself back on the 200 moving average, and this green candle right here is what every seasoned trader prayed for. Every seasoned trader prayed for this Friday candle to just establish support. It's kind of saying, you know what, we fell back, but we caught our footing. This technical setup is telling us that it's not going to necessarily keep moving down. It's telling us that it kind of caught its footing, and what I'm expecting is another move up. Or possibly a few days of it just kind of hanging out down here and, you know, catching its breath before moving up. But this is really great news. The S&P is not quite at the all-time highs. This yellow line right here is the high from the previous high. So it's not quite up there. So if you have like a 401k or you have mutual funds, you're not seeing exactly the same numbers that you had previously. But we're close, right? And the NASDAQ, which is the the index that is heavily tech and healthcare. This line right here is the all-time high, and as you can see, we broke above the all-time high. And again, very similar, we broke above the all-time high, we kept moving up, and then of course it just needed to come down and retest it. But this one is actually a very, very strong technical setup. It never crossed below this yellow line. This is the 20-day moving average. This is very like a big technical setup for lots of traders, lots of big investment firms, lots of the computers that are trading. And we're seeing that it got caught, right? So these things are really great. These are showing that support is forming, that it's going to just kind of catch its footing and come back up. Because if you look back to February, the market didn't care about moving averages. The market didn't care about anything that we would consider support. It just broke down past moving average. It only cared a little bit about the 200. It kind of caught itself, moved back up, and then broke back down. So what we're seeing is that the market is actually behaving back to what a trader is looking for. A seasoned trader is looking for technical setups, is looking for the market to be abiding by the rules that it sets up for itself. During big news moments, like what we saw in February, the market just didn't care. But now we're kind of getting back to a more stable environment. And that's really great news for anyone who, is investing long-term in their portfolios. And it's also really great news for anyone who is kind of coming into the market right now. Maybe you won't have the euphoria for all the new traders. Maybe you won't have like the euphoria that you've been having. Some people bought down here and, have made crazy money on this move up. And most of the people who bought down here were new traders. They weren't seasoned traders. Yeah. So maybe they won't see the same like crazy moves up every single day that they're used to. But if they're actually willing to put in the time to learn how to trade and to really learn technical analysis, then the market is behaving itself. And, all that to say with a grain of salt, because in reality, we're still facing a very news-driven market, and we're still facing very uncertain times. Yeah. So at any given point, it could be announced that we have to go back into quarantine. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the government's going to put us back into quarantine, at least not in the U.S. I know other countries are still in quarantine, and that's something to kind of consider, right? But they could announce like a second wave. China and the U.S. have been having like this tariff fight for over 2 years, and they kind of keep going back and forth. They keep, Trump tweets are still like missiles to this market. Trump can say something on Twitter and it can drive the market up or down. So it's still a very news-driven market. It's behaving itself a little bit more than what we have been seeing in the last few months. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, that even though the technical setups are there, anything can come out in the news and can really drive this market down.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Melly, for sharing that with us.
Yes.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Every Sunday, we're going to be here sharing what we've learned with you guys, because as we said, it's about passing on the knowledge, passing on the experiences so that you can grow faster than we do. Right?
Exactly.
Definitely.
So this has been another episode of Retired 25. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in following us, please follow us on YouTube, Facebook at Retired 25. And Melly, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, _Melirosa, Melirosa. You can also actually find me on Facebook, Melirosa Roybal. Most of the stuff I post on Facebook are actually in Spanish and have to do with my MLM business. So if that is actually something you're interested in, if you're in MLM and you kind of want to see how to grow your business that way, head over to Facebook and follow me, Melirosa, and last name Roybal.
Perfect. And where do we find you, Tori?
As I mentioned before, you can follow me on Instagram. Please follow me on Instagram. I'm trying to get my followings up at this point. And it's at Tori Dardy. So at TORI Dardy on Instagram, and I have the same thing on Facebook. So you can follow me on Facebook. Instagram is going to be a lot more interesting, a lot more juicy, because that's usually where I am. And Facebook, I'm on there a little bit, but mostly on Instagram. So Instagram and Facebook at Tori Dardy.
All right, perfect. And as always, those links will be posted in the description of this video. And if you're interested in getting your own copy of the Traffic Secrets book, that will also be in the link of the description.
Nice.
So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
All right,
All right,
bye.
see you later.
Have a great week, everyone.